Do you need trauma? Hi, welcome to the second episode of the In a Matter of Seconds Backstage Pass. My name is Vives Khuong,
And I'm young Khuong.
and this is where you get some special bonus content that did not make it into the book. To get the book, just go to victoriavives.com.
Last time we expanded a little bit on the bystander effect and how that may have affected your outlook on things. So moving on in the book, there's a question in one of those pages that I thought was pretty fascinating. And you ask, would my life be as fulfilling as it is now without the traumas of my past? And of course I'm paraphrasing, but that seems to be a pretty critical question. What do you think?
Trauma is not necessarily pleasant, especially when we are into the situation, when we are in the trauma. Sometimes we are not able to see the full picture. So we don't realize that it's actually a series of interlaced aspects in the trauma. So what I'm meaning with this is almost like we have this part of ourselves that we didn't tap into yet. So there is a part of us that is hidden there, is dormant, and by almost thanks to the trauma, it is like activated, and suddenly we discover a part of ourselves that we never ever knew before. So I just feel that without those aspects in my life, those traumas, I would have missed half of who I am. When I look back at my trauma, I don't necessarily remember the pain as much as the strength that I drew from it, and as much as the gifts that I learned, the compassion that I learned from it. And I feel that it's part of the human condition to go through these experiences.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common for people to look back on things that they may have had a bad experience with, or some kind of traumatic experience, and it's very easy to say, oh, I wish I could have done this different, or would have done that better, and then my life would be so much better now. But it doesn't seem like that's really what you're saying in your book, because you went through all these traumatic experiences, and thinking back, it would be understandable to say, let's just remove that part of my life and this aspect and that aspect that was so painful and so traumatic. But would you really want to do that?
What is interesting about this is that I feel that when I ponder about trauma that has recently happened, something that happened, let's say last year, at that point, maybe I would say, I don't want it. Like, I wish this didn't happen. If this didn't happen, now I would feel more confident, or I will have not lost this and that. I don't know how I'm going to go through in this situation. I don't know how I'm going to make it. But the thing is, then there is another layer and another layer. Another year passes, and we survive, right? We are able to make the best out of it, to understand what that gives us if we are going through the healing process. So this is something that I think it has been so important for me, to not just leave it there dormant and ignore it, but truly go in depth into what it meant to me, for me, and why it happened, what could I have done better, what was not my part. So truly going and reflecting and finding my own truth within it was very precious. And there has been things that it has taken years and years to truly heal and look back. And I had a boyfriend that would wear this hood, and very dark. And I remember sometimes washing my face in the bathroom and being afraid of closing my eyes in case he's going to be there. So I had this fear every time I closed my eyes to wash my face. And suddenly I realized, wow, what an adventure I lived. I mean, life, only the pretty, only the light and love, is, to me, is not all that there is. So it's a full spectrum of experiences that this boyfriend gifted me. He invited me into his experience and allowed me in. So it was like going into this movie, and I was able to be in the first row, seeing all of this and experiencing. And yes, it took a little piece of myself in some ways, but it gave me so much. So I feel that every experience I had, it had a little bit of this. And because of this, it's precious. And sometimes it takes time. I'm not like I have overcome everything. So, I still have things that hurt me. And once again, normally are things that are recent. So I didn't have the time to process them, to move beyond, to really understand, to resolve them. And I always go back to the idea of the blessing in the situation. So that's that's always what I go into, to think what is the good part. And sometimes I don't find it. And sometimes it might take me years to find it. So I feel it's super important. I have another video, so maybe we can include a link here, that is about how to heal at a deep level, because it's not just the spiritual aspect of, oh yeah, of course, this was great for my spirit. It's not just that. We have other aspects of ourselves that we need to heal. So I'm going to put a link. I will make sure. So check that video out.
So wow, that's there's a lot there. So it seems that really the key to growth is to be able to heal and reflect on on these traumatic experiences. That's what I think I'm hearing from you. So if we look at it from a different perspective, we know that some people don't heal and don't self-reflect on certain traumatic experiences, and by definition, a traumatic experience essentially creates some kind of wound, right? A psychological, emotional. We're not talking about the physical at this point, but so if somebody does develop these wounds, we know that they're essentially going to be suffering in some way as a result of this trauma. But yet it seems also that you're reaching new and higher levels of self-awareness and even fulfillment as a result of being able to heal and reflect on these traumas. It almost sounds as though you're saying that trauma is necessary if we want to get to that highest level of self-actualization, self-awareness, and fulfillment.
It's a tough thing to answer. I think yes. It's a tough thing to answer because I want to believe that it is possible for us to have a different paradigm, in that we are able to live in such joy that we achieve even greater levels of joy than we even know as our collective right now. So I want to believe that it is possible to have such awareness already. How can we access that awareness already so that we don't need to go through the trauma? Is that possible? That's my question. Can we be so devoted to our awareness, our consciousness, our growth, our healing, our consciousness, that we are going to put the time in discover ourselves, even though there is no trauma? And is it possible? Because normally what happens is that if there is no trauma, we become kind of lazy. Oh, my life is great, so why would I do anything to improve myself? So that happens sometimes. So that's an aspect of it. Would people be so devoted to self-discovery that they would do the work to really learn about who we are? That's one aspect. And then the other aspect is, can we learn without that contrast that occurs between the trauma and the blessing? Can we truly have the experience, or it would be just like a theoretical concept that we don't really have viscerally?
Yeah, when I think of that, it reminds me of the idea of stress, and that conventionally we think of stress as being a bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. But we know that
stress, I hate stress.
But at the same time, we know that we need some stress, right? So stress is the thing that motivates us to do things, so that we're out of that stress, right? We learn from it. We learn to do things better. We know what we want, what we don't want. And so trauma seems to be like the next level of stress, in the sense that it's very stressful, but not only is it stressful, it actually creates a wound. It has a damaging effect. So when I think of, say, fitness, for example, when a person is lifting weights, they're essentially creating these micro injuries, And as a result, the body adapts and gets stronger and faster, whatever kind of training you're doing. So I'm kind of wondering if, from an emotional, spiritual, psychological level, whether trauma is necessary in a different way than just stress as a motivator for us to evolve, to change.
I do feel that, yeah, you're up to something there. Because I feel that by putting ourselves in these situations, we train our minds, we train our spirit, we train our resiliency, we train ourselves so that it's not all just like, floating in the clouds and feeling just great all the time. So it does put us in action for sure, especially for the self-discovery aspect. I still want to think, is there another way? Because when we're going through, actually, when we're going through it, it's tough. But the last few times I had trauma, sometimes I was able actually to, something good is coming. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to see who I become because this was so painful. That means that I'm going to discover something amazing. And yes, I went from that process and then, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And no, but wait, let's see what is the blessing, what is the silver lining. So I feel that the more I accept the process of pain, the easier it becomes.
To see the silver lining, you mean?
To see the silver lining and to let it go faster so that we don't just stay there in the pain and, we just move on and say, okay, let me do the work that I have to do. So in the work that I do, I'm an energy healer, shamanism, and divine sexuality teacher. So one of the things that I teach my students is soul retrieval. So soul retrieval is any time that there is a soul loss, which means a piece of you is like it has been taken away. So trauma has happened and something of you is now missing. So anytime that I go into trauma now, I kind of go into, okay, soul retrieval. We need to start healing right away. I'm not gonna wait because sometimes, there is people that maybe come to see me 20 years after something happened. And then, of course, it's almost like a wound that is festering there. So we want to just treat it as soon as possible. So I think by not dwelling in it as much as, okay, let's just take the time. If you need to cry, just cry. If you need to do a soul retrieval, do it. If you need some time off, take it. What you need to do, just being loving with ourselves, but at the same time, not abandoning the situation and truly moving forward as to how we can make the best out of the situation.
It's a difficult subject because on the one hand, trauma is painful, by nature.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it seems to have a necessary component. And I think it seems that we all go through trauma. Sometimes we don't think we have any trauma, but I think it's impossible to go through life without some trauma. And whether we are aware of it and whether we are aware of what the ramifications, the effects of those traumas were, I don't know, but I find it difficult to believe that we can go through life without trauma. And so then, how do we make the best of the situation? I guess that's the big question that we're always gonna. I don't know if there's an answer to that.
So, when you were talking, something came to mind that I think it would be important. When you said that sometimes we go through trauma and might not realize, I think you said something like that, and I find that to be so true. We are like fish in the water. Sometimes we're not aware we have water all around us. So we are born in a situation of abuse, of poverty, of racism, whatever it is. But suddenly, when we are grown up, we realize we have these insecurities and these things, and we don't realize that we have been oppressed or abused or whatever happened. So sometimes we don't realize that we're in trauma. We might even be living it right now and we don't understand because we got used to it. We are, we were born in that situation, so we continue it. Maybe then we choose a partner that is oppressing us too. So I feel that would be super important to gain that self-awareness. For us, it's super important. Everything about consciousness self-awareness and just making sure that we reflect and we understand more about ourselves and others. So I think that that would be a first thing to consider, whether we are aware of that or not. And all of us have blind spots. So that's what sometimes in having a partnership, we have been together for 13 years. So that helps sometimes reflecting some things back, like, hey, just so you know, hey, there is something here to take. Because otherwise, it's like we are within ourselves, so we don't have a perspective to understand. So that would be something that came, but it's not answering your question.
Well, I mean, I think all of it really is very important and related. I don't know that there is an answer to this. I'm sure that many people will say that there are answers.
Let us know what you think. What do you think?
I think there's just it's such a subjective thing, and everybody's got so many experiences and can tell you one thing or another thing, and whether there is a specific truth or strategy that works for everybody, I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you, so feel free to comment. I always respond, so I'm happy to start a conversation so that we support each other. Once again, relationships is one of the best ways to understand each other, right?
This is one of those things that I think is going to be ongoing. It's kind of a lifelong question. And certainly I think your book addresses a lot of this, because you've gone through so much trauma and have come out on top. And I think that I think we can all learn a little bit about that. And especially for those of us who maybe not have gone through such, you've had some very unique situations that I think are just not possible to experience unless you are in a very specific time and place with certain circumstances. And there's a lot to learn from those. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, I feel, give me a kiss. Well, let me tell you, I'm in a much better situation right now than my past. So that's what also gives me a lot of happiness and joy, that wherever you are right now, you can always go to a place of happiness, and then you can help others with what you have learned. So that's awesome. Well, so I think that was all for today. Make sure to like if you feel that this was entertaining, supportive, informative. Share with a friend if you feel it can inspire them in some way, and subscribe and click that bell so that you receive notifications and you are the first one to know next time we share a video. And with that said, have a beautiful day. Bye.